He was a ghost in the machine, a saboteur with a charming smile and a firm handshake, and for the better part of a year, he made my life a living hell. He was a master of political warfare, a knife in the dark who never left a single fingerprint. But he made one fatal, arrogant mistake. He underestimated my patience. And he never, ever imagined that the best, most complete revenge I could possibly serve was giving him everything he thought he ever wanted. My name is Michael Chun. I'm 55 years old, a managing director at a global consultancy where I navigate corporate minefields for a living. Back in 2007, I was a different man then. An IT operations manager for one of the largest energy companies on the planet. My world was the company's vast, complex digital brain, the enterprise resource planning, ERP, systems that ran global logistics, finance, and operations. It was a high-stress, high-stakes environment where a single misplaced line of code could ripple outwards, costing the company millions. I was good at my job. I was direct. I was highly technical, and I was a firm believer in results over politics. This belief, I would soon learn, was a dangerous, almost naive vulnerability in the world I inhabited. The problem, as it so often does, started with what I thought was a solution. My team was stretched to the breaking point on a massive system upgrade, and I needed a heavy hitter. I needed a true ERP architect, someone with the deep technical knowledge to guide the project and act as a consultant to my team. After a lengthy search, I brought on a contractor named Jeremy. On paper, and for the first 6 months of his contract, Jeremy was a gift from the heavens. He was brilliant, there was no denying it. He could dissect a complex coding problem with the skill of a master surgeon. He was charismatic, able to explain highly technical concepts to our non-technical internal customers in a way that made them feel respected and understood. And his work ethic seemed unimpeachable. He would come in early, stay late to help junior developers, and deliver complex solutions ahead of schedule, always with a confident, easy smile. He charmed everyone, especially the business-side directors who relied on our systems. He was so good, in fact, that I went to bat for him. I lobbied my boss and HR for weeks, convincing them to create a new, full-time, permanent position for him. I made him a generous offer, and he accepted. It was, without a doubt, one of the worst and most consequential decisions of my professional life. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have possibly known, was that Jeremy the contractor was a carefully constructed facade. It was a character he played to get what he wanted. The real Jeremy, the one who emerged once he was a full-fledged employee with a generous salary, benefits, and job security, was a high-functioning, deeply resentful alcoholic. The change wasn't gradual. It was like a light switch flipped on the 91st day, the very day his probationary period officially ended. The superstar employee vanished, replaced by a sullen, resentful ghost. The perfect attendance record became a running joke. He started showing up to our 8 a.m. daily stand-up meetings at 8:15, then 8:30, sometimes not at all, smelling faintly of expensive mouthwash and offering a string of increasingly flimsy excuses. Car trouble, a bad night's sleep. My alarm didn't go off. Important project meetings were missed entirely, with a passive-aggressive sorry, got tied up on a critical call. Email sent an hour after the meeting had already concluded. His work, once so flawless and elegant, began to degrade at an alarming rate. Deadlines were pushed right up to the last minute, then missed. Code was submitted with sloppy, obvious errors that my junior developers, the same ones he used to help, now had to stay late to fix. The confident, collaborative smile was gone, replaced by a defensive, irritable sneer whenever I questioned him about a missed milestone. He had gotten what he wanted, the stability and prestige of a permanent role at a Fortune 50 company, and now he was just coasting, his brilliant mind slowly pickling in a sea of booze and complacency. The first time I knew for sure was after a team lunch celebrating a project milestone. We all came back to the office, and I pulled Jeremy aside to discuss a technical specification for the next phase. As he leaned over the blueprint on my desk, I smelled it. It wasn't faint. It was the distinct, sweet and sour scent of bourbon on his breath. It was 1:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. I had to act. It was my duty as his manager. I called him into my office later that afternoon, closed the door, and had the deeply uncomfortable conversation that no manager ever wants to have. I was professional. I was direct. I didn't make accusations. I simply stated my observation. I referenced company policy on substance use and our strict fit-for-work requirements. I offered him information on the company's employee assistance program, a confidential service for getting help, no questions asked. He didn't react with shame or denial or even a hint of gratitude. He reacted with cold, reptilian fury. His eyes narrowed to slits. He didn't admit anything, of course. He flatly denied it, accused me of imagining things. And then, with a chilling shift in tone, he suggested that I was targeting him for some unknown reason, that perhaps I felt threatened by his skills. I knew then and there that I hadn't just counseled an employee. I had made a dangerous and cunning enemy. Jeremy was a saboteur of the highest order. He knew he couldn't beat me on a technical level. My knowledge of the systems was just as deep as his. So he started a quiet, insidious campaign to undermine me, politically. He was a natural at it. He was a creature of the swampy, political underworld of the corporation. I focused on managing my team and delivering projects. He focused on managing perceptions. It started with whispers. I began to notice him having long closed-door coffee meetings with the business side directors he had so carefully charmed as a contractor. One afternoon, I walked past a conference room and saw him with Sarah Johnson, the director of supply chain, one of our most important internal clients. Jeremy was at the whiteboard, pointing at a complex architectural diagram, his expression one of grave concern. He was planting seeds. A few days later, the first missile landed on my desk. It was an email from my own boss, a vice president I rarely interacted with directly. The subject line was, "Urgent concern, supply chain module stability." He wrote that he had just gotten off the phone with Director Johnson, who had expressed serious reservations about the upcoming rollout. I knew the module was rock solid. My team had tested it for months. But now, thanks to Jeremy, a phantom problem had been created, and it was my job to spend the next week of my life proving a negative, preparing presentations, and holding emergency meetings to reassure everyone. Jeremy had created a fire, and I was the one who had to put it out, making it look like my department was in a constant state of chaos. He was a political ghost. He never left fingerprints. He'd never criticized me directly in an email or a meeting. That was for amateurs. Instead, he would forward a minor complaint from a junior user straight to a VP, bypassing me entirely, with a note that said, "Just wanted to make sure you had visibility on this issue. Not sure if Michael is aware." It was a classic snake move, designed to make me look like I was either incompetent or hiding problems from upper management. He also worked to poison my own team against me. He would take the junior developers out for lunch and, under the guise of being their friend and mentor, would subtly undermine my authority. I overheard one of my best young coders, a kid named Ben, talking in the break room one day. Jeremy was saying Michael's project management style is a little old school, he said to a colleague. That if we used a more agile method, we wouldn't have to work so much overtime. Jeremy was positioning himself as their champion, while I was the one pushing them to clean up the messes he was secretly creating. The job became a living nightmare. I spent more time defending against Jeremy's invisible maneuvers and putting out phantom fires than I did doing my actual work. It was exhausting, a draining war of attrition. He was a master of walking right up to the line of insubordination without ever crossing it, so my hands were tied. I had no hard evidence, no smoking gun that I could take to HR to begin the termination process. All I had was the gnawing certainty that one of my own team members was actively and maliciously trying to get me fired. This shadow war went on for over a year. I was burning out. The job I once loved had become a toxic quagmire of paranoia and stress. I started looking for a way out, scanning the internal job postings every single day. And then a lifeline appeared. An internal posting for a senior project management role in a completely different, more prestigious department, New Technology Ventures. It was the company's internal incubator for cutting-edge tech. It was a step up in pay grade, a massive leap in responsibility, and my qualifications were a perfect fit. I polished my resume, aced the interviews, and got the job. The sense of relief was immense, a physical weight lifting off my shoulders. It was like coming up for air after being held underwater for what felt like an eternity. But as I prepared to leave my old role, as the relief began to settle, a new, colder, more patient thought began to take shape. I wasn't just going to leave. I wasn't just going to escape. I was going to leave a parting gift. My revenge was now ready to be served. As the departing manager, I was expected to help find and train my replacement. My boss, a well-meaning but conflict-averse VP named George, called a meeting to discuss the succession plan. He assumed we'd do a wide external search. That's when I set the trap. "Actually, George," I said, leaning forward in my chair with an air of practiced confident certainty, "I don't think we need to look far. In fact, I think the obvious choice is right here on the team. It has to be Jeremy." My boss looked surprised, his eyebrows shooting up. "Jeremy? Really? He's your architect, isn't he? I thought you two had some friction." "That was just professional friction, the kind that leads to better outcomes." I lied smoothly. "He pushes hard, and I push back. It's healthy. But think about it. He has the deepest technical knowledge of the systems of anyone on the team. The customers absolutely love him. You know how many times Sarah Johnson has personally praised his work to you. Promoting him would be a huge morale booster for the team, showing them there's a real path for advancement within the department. Frankly, not promoting him would be a mistake. The customers would see it as a snub." I was playing his game now, using all the political buzzwords I knew he loved to hear. I had him. I knew I had him. Jeremy was a known quantity to the business, a favorite of the people who made the most noise. George, who was more interested in avoiding conflict than in making the right decision, saw an easy, politically safe solution. He wouldn't have to go through a long, painful hiring process. He could just promote the customer's choice and look like a hero. Jeremy's own hubris sprung the trap. When he was offered the promotion, he jumped at it like a starving dog on a stake. He was so blinded by what he saw as a total and complete victory over me that he never once stopped to consider the reality of the job. He thought being the manager meant having the power, the prestige, the corner office. He didn't understand that it also meant having the crushing responsibility, the absolute accountability, and being the single point of failure when things went wrong. The transition was a work of art, my final masterpiece in that department. I built a comprehensive transition plan for him, a series of documents and meetings where I supposedly downloaded all of my institutional knowledge. In reality, I gave him the what, but never the why or the how. I showed him the reports I ran every week, but not the complex, custom back-end queries I had written to generate them. I introduced him to the key players, but not the back-channel relationships I had cultivated over years to get things done when the official process broke down. He thought he knew it all, and he was more than happy to sign off on the final transition document, officially attesting that I had provided him with all the knowledge he needed to succeed. He was too arrogant to ask questions, too proud to admit there was anything he didn't know. He gloated openly to a few coworkers, making sure the news got back to me. He told them he couldn't believe I had fought his promotion, a lie I had let him believe, and that the company had given him the job, without him even having to apply. He laughed about how much it must really hurt me, that he, the man I had tried to hold down, was now my replacement. He vowed to show me up and run the department the right way. I just smiled. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait. I didn't have to wait long. The first cracks in his fragile empire appeared within a month of my departure. The customer turned on him first. As an architect, He could promise them the world with a smile and a whiteboard sketch. As the manager, he was the one who had to actually deliver it. When his team started missing delivery deadlines on a critical project for the supply chain group, the same director, Sarah Johnson, who used to sing his praises, was now sending him blistering all-caps emails, carbon copying half the executive leadership team. Jeremy, who had never been on the receiving end of that kind of direct high-level pressure, folded completely. Second, his own team turned on him. Instead of shielding them from the customer's shitstorm, as a good manager does, he threw them under the bus and then backed it over them. He would forward Sarah's angry emails to the whole team with cowardly notes like, "See what you guys have caused. We all need to do better." In meetings with the customer, he would name specific developers, blaming them for the delays. The loyalty his team once had for him, even the loyalty he had manufactured through his lunchtime complaints about me, evaporated overnight. They saw him for what he was, a weak, self-serving coward. One of my former star developers, Ben, actually came to my new office to ask for advice on transferring out, telling me that Jeremy was a toxic nightmare who blames everyone but himself. Finally, upper management turned on him. With a constant stream of complaints now coming from both his customers and his own employees, he was cornered. His VPs, who only cared about keeping things quiet and stable, saw him as a source of noise and problems. After his first full quarter as manager, he was placed on a formal performance improvement plan, PIP. In our company, a PIP was not a tool for improvement. It was the first step in managing you out the door. It was corporate death row. The final confrontation, the moment I had been waiting for, came on the last working day of the year. The office was quiet. I ran into him in the break room as I was getting a coffee. He looked like a ghost. His face was pale and puffy. His eyes were bloodshot and latticed with red lines, and he had the defeated slump of a man carrying an invisible crushing weight. "Hey, Jeremy," I said, my voice deliberately light and friendly. "How's the new job going? Living the dream?" It was like I had lanced a boil. All his misery and resentment came pouring out. He sighed, a ragged, pathetic sound. "It's a nightmare, man," he grumbled, staring into his coffee cup as if it held the answers to the universe. "An absolute freaking nightmare." He told me everything. The deliveries were late. The customers were furious. The VPs were breathing down his neck. He'd had a couple of his best people transfer off his team, leaving him critically short-handed. As a result, he had to cancel a planned non-refundable trip to the Caribbean with his wife over the holidays. The hours were longer than he had ever imagined, and the upcoming year-end financial close in January was going to be 60-plus-hour weeks, 7 days a week, for the entire month. He was terrified that even with the insane hours, his team was going to miss that critical, legally mandated deadline. Then he looked at me, his eyes full of a desperate, pleading misery that was almost beautiful to behold. "I never wanted this job, man," he said, his voice cracking. "I never wanted any of this pressure. This isn't what I thought it would be. You can have the freaking thing back anytime you want it. I mean it." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my own coffee, letting the silence hang in the air for a moment. I looked him dead in the eye, letting him see the calm, placid smile on my face. "I know," I replied, my voice quiet and calm. "That's why I made sure you got it." The blank, miserable stare on his face slowly morphed into confusion. The gears were turning sluggishly in his alcohol-addled brain. He replayed my words. He replayed the past year. My sudden departure. My glowing recommendation. The easy promotion. His hubris. The impossible demands of the job. And then, the dawning of a horrifying, soul-crushing realization. His face turned from pale to a deep, blotchy red fury. In that single, silent moment, he understood everything. He finally realized that I had slipped the knife in so delicately, so professionally, that he had never even felt it. He had bled out for 6 months, without ever knowing he'd been stabbed. He didn't say another word. He just stared at me with pure impotent hatred. On January 2nd, The first official workday of the new year, he resigned with no notice. He just packed up his personal effects from the corner office he had coveted for so long, walked out of the building without a word to anyone, and was never seen again. He was now permanently marked as non-hireable with one of the largest global energy companies in the world and all of their thousands of affiliates. He had burned the most important bridge of his career to the ground. The icing on the cake, the final perfect postscript to my revenge, came just about a year ago. I had left the energy company myself in 2014 and had gone on to work for a prestigious global consultancy. Part of my senior role now includes business development and occasionally high-level talent acquisition for our biggest clients. One afternoon, a recruiter sent me a resume for a senior architect position we were trying to fill for a major international banking client. The system had automatically flagged it for my review because it showed that the candidate had worked with me at the energy firm years ago. The name on the resume was Jeremy. I marveled at the document. It was a roadmap of a failed career. There was a large, unexplained employment gap immediately following his walkout from the energy company. After that, it was a string of short-term, 6-month contract jobs. It was the resume of a man who couldn't hold down a permanent job, a man who was now just a gun for hire. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. I hit approve on the resume and sent a note to the recruiter. Looks interesting. Let's set up a panel interview with myself, the hiring director, and the client. I know him from way back. Happy to help vet him. I checked in with the recruiter a few days later. Jeremy had eagerly accepted the interview slot. The day before the scheduled video interview, I went onto LinkedIn. I found his profile, and I sent him a connection request. With it, I included a short, friendly, and utterly devastating message. Hey Jeremy, long time no see. Saw you were interviewing with us tomorrow. Really looking forward to the interview and catching up on old times. Jeremy never called in for the interview. The next morning, the recruiter, the hiring director, the client, and I all sat on a video call for 15 minutes, staring at an empty virtual waiting room. The hiring director was furious at the unprofessional no-call, no-show. Jeremy's name was immediately entered into our global system. He is now persona non grata, permanently blacklisted, with one of the largest and most influential global consultancies as well. He had stabbed me in the back, but he failed to finish the job. He just made me stronger, and I made sure he would never get the chance to stab anyone else in the back again. He never did accept my LinkedIn invitation, by the way, but it's still out there, pending. A quiet, permanent little digital reminder of a lesson learned the hard way.